Hello. Haha. I think it works now. Hope it works properly. Okay. Hello. How are you? How are you, friends? It's been forever. It's been really forever. But it is Virgin Wolf's birthday, so I was like, cannot miss this for everything. Well, I cannot miss our good girl Virginia's birthday. Um, I'll read 2 chapter today. After the first chapter, I'll explain a little what's been going on with my life and why I haven't been reading to the Lighthouse often on YouTube. But first off, well, okay, it's been forever. Sorry if I made any mistake. You can see change my background. It's a lighthouse now instead of Catherine Deneuve in Podon. I still have my poster of Podon, and I still need to set it up somewhere. But I'm moving soon, so we'll do that then. I feel like I had something important to say, but I don't remember. So I have a 2 small chapter. Yes. When I started this thing, I said I will do it when I have time and when it made sense, and sadly, it didn't make sense for most of last year. But I will finish this book one day on stream. I finished it in my own life, like I've read it already. But I will finish this book on stream, I promise, unless something crazy happens. We're more than halfway through anyway. Yes. So we were at chapter 18 of the second part, I think, of the first part. Sorry, there's only 2 parts. So chapter 18. I'll be back in a few seconds. Now I'll let you with Virginia. As usual, Lily thought there was always something that had to be done at that precise moment, something that Mrs. Ramsay had decided for reasons of her own to do instantly. It might be with everyone standing about making jokes, as now, not being able to decide whether they were going into the smoking room, into the drawing room, up to the attics. Then one saw Mrs. Ramsay in the midst of this hubbub, standing there with Minta's arm in hers. Bethink her, yes, it is time for that now. And so make off at once with an air of secrecy to do something alone. And directly she went, a sort of disintegration set in. They wavered about, went different ways. Mr. Banks took Charles Tansley by the arm and went off to finish on the terrace the discussion they had begun at dinner about politics, thus giving a turn to the whole poise of the evening, making the weight fall in a different direction, as if Lily thought, seeing them go, and hearing a word or two about the policy of the Labour Party, they had gone up on the bridge of the ship and were taking their bearings. The change from poetry to politics struck her like that. So Mr. Banks and Charles Tansley went off, while the others stood looking at Mrs. Ramsay going upstairs in the lamplight alone, where Lily wondered, was she going so quickly? Not that she did, in fact, run or hurry. She went indeed rather slowly. She felt rather inclined just for a moment to stand still after all that chatter and pick out one particular thing, the thing that mattered, to detach it, separate it off, clean it of all the emotions and odds and ends of things, and so hold it before her, and bring it to the tribunal where, ranged about in conclave, sat the judges she had set up to decide these things. Is it good? Is it bad? Is it right or wrong? Where are we going to? And so on. So she righted herself after the shock of the event and quite unconsciously and incongruously used the branches of the elm trees outside to help her to stabilize her position. Her world was changing. They were still. The event had given her a sense of movement. All must be in order. She must get that right and that right, she thought, insensibly approving of the dignity of the tree's stillness. and now again of the superb upward rise, like the beak of a ship up a wave, of the elm branches as the wind raised them. For it was windy. She stood a moment to look out. It was windy, so that the leaves now and then brushed open a star, and the stars themselves seemed to be shaking and darting light and trying to flash out between the edges of the leaves. Yes, that was done then, accomplished, and as with all things done, become solemn. Now, one thought of it, cleared of chatter and emotion, it seemed always to have been, only was shown now, and so being shown struck everything into stability. They would, she thought, going on again, however long they lived, come back to this night, this moon, this wind, this house, and to her too. It flattered her, where she was most susceptible of flattery, to think how, wound about in their hearts. However long they lived, she would be woven, and this, and this, and this, she thought, going upstairs, laughing, but affectionately at the sofa on the landing, her mother's, at the rocking chair, her father's, at the map of the Hebrides. I don't know what that means. The Hebrides. How that would be revived again in the life of Paul and Minta, the Rayleigh. It's the last name people. She tried a new name over, and she felt with her hand on the nursery door that community of feeling with other people which emotion gives, as if the wall of partition had become so thin that practically the feeling was one of release and happiness, was all one streams and chairs, tables, map, were hers, were theirs, it did not matter whose, and Paul and Minta would carry it on when she was dead. She turned the handle firmly lest it should squeak, and went in, pursing her lips slightly, as if to remind herself that she must not speak loud. But directly she came in, she saw, with annoyance, that the precaution was not needed. The children were not asleep. It was most annoying. Mildred should be more careful. There was James wide awake and Cam sitting bolt upright, and Mildred out of bed in her bare feet. And it was almost 11, and they were all talking. What was the matter? It was that horrid scold again. This is decaf, it's super late. What was the matter? It was that horrid skull again. She had told Mildred to move it, but Mildred, of course, had forgotten, and now there was Cam wide awake and James wide awake quarreling when they ought to have been asleep hours ago. What had possessed Edward to send them this horrid skull? She had been so foolish as to let them nail it up there. It was nailed fast, Mildred said, and Cam couldn't go to sleep with it in the room. And James screamed if she touched it. Then Cam must go to sleep. It had great horns, said Cam. Must go to sleep and dream of a lovely palace, said Mrs. Ramsay, sitting down on the bed by her side. She could see the horns, Cam said, all over the room. It was true, wherever they put the light, and James could not sleep without a light. There was always a shadow somewhere. But think, Cam, it's only an old pig, said Mrs. Ramsay. A nice black pig like the pigs at the farm. But Cam thought it was a horrid thing, branching at her all over the room. Well then, said Mrs. Ramsay, we will cover it up. And they all watched her go to the chest of drawers and open the little drawers quickly one after another, and not saying anything that would do. She quickly took her own shawl off and wound it round the skull, round and round and round, and then she came back to Cam and laid her head almost flat on the pillow beside Cam's and said, "Oh, lovely, look now. How the fairies would love it." It was like a bird's nest. It was like a beautiful mountain, such as she had seen abroad, with valleys and flowers and bells ringing and birds singing and little goats and antelopes. She could see the words echoing as she spoke them rhythmically in Cam's mind, and Cam was repeating after her, "Oh, it was like a mountain, a bird's nest, a garden, and there were little antelopes, and her eyes were opening and shutting." And Mrs. Ramsay went on saying still more monotonously and more rhythmically and more nonsensically, how she must shut her eyes and go to sleep and dream of mountains and valley and stars falling and parrots and antelopes and gardens and everything lovely, she said, raising her head very slowly and speaking more and more mechanically until she sat upright and saw that Cam was asleep. Now, she whispered, crossing over to his bed, Jane must go to sleep too, for see, she said, the boar skull was still there. They had not touched it. They had done just what he wanted. It was there quite honored. He made sure that the skull was still there under the shawl, but he wanted to ask her something more. Would they go to the lighthouse tomorrow? No, not tomorrow, she said, but soon. She promised him. The next fine day. He was very good. He lay down. She covered him up. But he would never forget. She knew, and she felt angry with Charles Tansley, with her husband, and with herself, for she had raised his hopes. Then, feeling for her shawl and remembering that she had wrapped it round the boar's skull, she got up and pulled the window down another inch or two and heard the wind and got a breath of the perfectly indifferent chill night air and murmured good night to Mildred and left the room and let the tongue of the door slowly lengthen in the lock and went out. She hoped he would not bang his books on the floor above their heads, she thought, still thinking how annoying Charles Tansley was. For neither of them slept well. They were excitable children, and since he said things like that about the lighthouse, it seemed to her likely that he would knock a pile of books over, just as they were going to sleep, clumsily sweeping them off the table with his elbow. For she supposed that he had gone upstairs to work, yet he looked so desolate, yet she would feel relief when he went, yet she would see that he was better treated tomorrow. Yet he was admirable with her husband, yet his manner certainly wanted improving, yet she liked his laugh. Thinking this, as she came downstairs, she noticed that she could now see the moon itself through the staircase window, the yellow harvest moon, and they saw her standing above them on the stairs. Sorry, my nose itchy. That's my mother, though, Prue. Sorry, that's my mother, thought Prue. Yes, Minta should look at her. Paul Rayleigh should look at her. That is the thing itself, she felt, as if there were only one person like that in the world, her mother. And from having been quite grown up a moment before, talking with the others, she became a child again, and what they had been doing was a game, and would her mother sanction their game or condemn it, she wondered, and thinking what chance it was for Minta and Paul and Lily to see her, and feeling what an extraordinary stroke of fortune it was for her to have her, and now she would never grow up and never leave home, she said like a child. We thought of going down to the beach to watch the waves. Instantly, for no reason at all, Mrs. Ramsay became like a girl of 20, full of gaiety. A mood of revelry suddenly took possession of her. Of course they must go. Of course they must go, she cried, laughing and running down the last three or four steps quickly. She began turning from one to the others and laughing and drawing. Minta's wrapped round her and saying she only wished she could come too, and would they be very late and had any of them got a watch? Yes, Paul has, said Minta. Paul slipped a beautiful gold watch out of a little wash leather case to show her, and as he held it in the palm of his hand before her, he felt she knows about it all about it. I need not say anything, he was saying to her as he showed her the watch. I've done it, Mrs. Ramsay. I owe it all to you. And seeing the gold watch lying in his hand, Mrs. Ramsay felt how extraordinarily lucky Minta is. She's marrying a man who has a gold watch in a wash leather bag. Oh, I wish I could come with you, she cried. But she was withheld by something so strong that she never thought of asking herself what it was. Of course, it was impossible for her to go with them, but she would have liked to go, had it not been for the other thing, and tickled by the absurdity of her thought. Oh, lucky to marry a man with a wash leather bag for his watch. She went with a smile on her lips into the other room, where her husband sat reading. So that's one chapter. Yes, I'll read another one. Just taking a small break. Hey, it's been forever. It's been forever. It's been a year. I think last time I read was also for Virginia's birthday. So, like, worst case scenario, I only read on her birthday, and in 10 years we'll be done. Or something like that. I've been extremely busy. So as you probably know, if you're following me here, I try to be a game developer, but I don't have enough money to make it as a full-time game developer. So I'm actually working in cinema. I'm what you would call like basically an assistant editor for like a few well-known French-Canadian TV shows. I'm not gonna name them. It's been a complicated road. I think my name will be in a few credits soon, but they haven't been. My name is not in credits right now. But I think there's probably a bunch of 2023 release that my name will be in. If ever you want to Google me or something, I don't know if I'm going to be on IMDb. I don't know. I'm not going to go change my IMDb for just like 6-screen credit or something like this. Like I'm way back in the scrolling credit at the end when I'm there. So like, anyway, I'm working that full time, and it's been crazy this year. As I said, I'm gonna be moving soon. I still try to keep up with video game too much, and I still play with too much of them, even though I barely have time. I had a surgery this year, which on one hand let me finish Elden Ring, but also I had a surgery this year, plus a bunch of other medical stuff. So for those that are interested about my video games opinion, there will be a podcast where I talk about my 2022 favorite game. There's been one for the last 5-6 years on my website that I do, and there's going to be one for 2022, but it always like come in April. April. That's better. In April or like May, when people don't care about the year before. I mostly do it, me and one of my friends, we mostly do it for ourselves, just as a way to go back and see what we thought of the game of the previous year. And we just recorded it, but editing 6 hour or 7 hour of podcast takes time, so I'll come soon. But mostly I've been trying to work on my video game, and by trying to work on video game, I mostly mean trying to get funding on them. And I didn't work enough on my video game. I got refused for funding. So I have 2 projects at the same time, multiple prototype, but like 2 ongoing projects. Please hold me, so you can see there's a video of this one on my YouTube channel, but it's been posted like a few years ago, so the game changed a lot since then, but it still kind of look the same, so I'll give you an idea. So that game I'm still developing, and it's actually super close to finish. Like I probably could finish it if I would work full-time on it. Like it'd probably be a month of work or something like that. Like I probably need 200 hours of work on it. But when you work in movie editing and stuff is crazy, working on your video games on the side is complicated, especially when you also have to work on forms and shit to get funding for them, and then you actually don't get it. As it is for To the Lighthouse, I will finish it one day. It's just a case of finding 200 hours of time to finish it. This one should be close to done, but I'm not working full time. Well, I'm not giving it most of my energy because my other one, my one other of my prototype is kind of doing the run in like some online festival or doing the run. Do we say that? It sounds like something disgusting. I said doing the run, but it's during the round. Yes. Okay. So I presented it in a few online festival, and I'm supposed to present it in. Well, I submitted for two other ones this year, but also like I've got a little interest from some publishers, so I've been working with them and try. Well, I've been working at trying to establish a pitch deck that makes sense for the game and then show it to publishers. This is far from being a done deal, so it doesn't mean that I'm absolutely going to get money to work on it, but I would like to have the opportunity to work full time on it. And if working on pitch deck for a few months give me that opportunity, I will do it. So, like, it's kind of weird. I fancy myself a video game developer, but realistically, I've been more working on like PowerPoints for my video games. I can talk about this game. So it's called Camille and Laura. I have a full demo. That's like about 8-9 minutes of the game. And it's basically my pitch is Gentleman meet Peppa Pig as a video game. So if you don't know Gentleman, it's quite funny because Gentleman is at the center of a kind of a controversy right now because it just won. It just dethroned Vertigo and Citizen Kane as the best film ever made. If we trust the Sight and Sound poll this year, and it's the first year it's as high as this. And I kind of feel I was not instrumental, but like I've been saying it's the best year and the best movie ever made for like the last 5 years. So, you know, I was before my time, As much as I like Citizen Kane and like Vertigo, it doesn't hold a candle to Gentleman, and a lot of people are angry and they think it's like the woke mob is putting that game at number one, putting the movie at number one on the list. And you could say I consider myself part of a woke mob, but whatever. It still deserves its place, way more than Citizen Kane's a classic, Vertigo too, but way more than those two. They're kind of boring. No, Gentleman's not. Some people will find it boring, but they're boring people. They're the boring one. Anyway, like to say the thing about just having a word about the controversy, I think Americans, especially white male Americans, which I am one of them, are very strong at establishing their own canon and then thinking that everything that doesn't fit their point of view is adjacent to that canon and it's not part of the main canon. So like a few years ago, you would do the same fucking list of the best movie ever made, and the only movie directed by a woman in the top 100 was Gentleman, which frankly doesn't make sense. Like it's not even trying to be a feminist and put more movie made by women, but like 8 of the top 10 movies were American movie, and then it was like basically one Fellini movie and one Tarkovsky movie, which I fucking love Fellini and Tarkovsky, but also like, they're the big name that you ever heard about. And it's crazy to me that like in a list of the most important movie ever, the Americans had such a strong stranglehold on it. And I think Gentleman is like, or vision of the canon kind of opening up to different movies, both movies directed by women, movies directed by people of color, and, you know, movie outside of America. And there was always movie outside of America in these lists. What I'm saying is that, like, Americans have always been forcing their stuff down our throats so hard, even towards American themselves, that, like, it's hard to consider anything outside. So everything that came from outside that the white American canon was starting with a handicap in a weird way. And some people think that by pushing back a movie like Gentleman on the top one, it's like giving it's like affirmative action towards Gentleman, but the reality of it is it's American movie starting to lose their handicap. And if you look at the list of 500 movies or something, it's still mostly American movie from white men director. So, like, and obviously Americans are very important in the history of cinema. I'm not saying the opposite, but, like, you know, in the top 10, that 8 movie would be by American director does not make sense. Yes, they're very important, but they're very important in that they have 25-30% of the pie of the cinema production. They don't have 80%. They shouldn't have 80%, is what I'm saying. So that was about Gentleman. Anyway, my video game is Gentleman Meet Peppa Pig. It's got Cammy and Ryan. It's about the daily life of a single mother. I say Meet Peppa Pig because it has kind of a very naive outlook and point of view. So obviously I'm inspired by Gentleman, but because I'm not the director of that movie, Chantal Ackerman, I didn't copy beats by beats her story because I didn't want to appropriate myself that story. I wanted to talk about, basic family life in the suburbs of Montreal is basically what the game's about, but still obviously touch on a few of the same theme, but come from a different point of view. So yeah, I'm working on a pitch deck for that thing. I'm gonna have to present it in a few weeks. So crossing my finger for that. So that's what I've been super busy about. Otherwise, I also got into board games like a crazy person. I have literally a game of Frosthaven set up on my table right now. And I feel getting into board games was kind of a way for me to get away from video games because I pass so much time just developing video games and playing video games that it gets kind of a good part of my life. Like, most of my life is like work, my partner, and video games. And sometimes that's kind of scary. So when it gets too scary, I get into board games instead of video games. Like, I talk a lot about movie, and I'm fairly knowledgeable about movie, but I actually can't abandon cinema in the last few years because I'm too fucking busy. And while I'm working full time in editing, so, like, I get home, I don't want to watch movies most of the time. But every time I go back on watching a movie, I'm like, hey, that shit's great. Just don't have time. Like, recently, I watch everything everywhere all at once, and I was kind of expecting not to like that movie for no good reason other than I tend to not trust the hype, but it's actually pretty fucking good. It's no Gentleman, but it's pretty fucking good. Let's read another chapter, shall we? Of course, she said to herself, coming into the room. She had to come here to get something she wanted. First, she wanted to sit down in a particular chair under a particular lamp, but she wanted something more. Well, she did not know, could not think what it was that she wanted. She looked at her husband, taking up her stocking and beginning to knit, and saw that he did not want to be interrupted. That was clear. He was reading something that moved him very much. He was half smiling, and then she knew he was controlling his emotion. He was tossing the pages over. He was acting it. Perhaps he was thinking himself the person in the book. She wondered what book it was. Oh, it was one of old Sir Walter's. She saw, adjusting the shade of her lamp so that the light fell on her knitting. For Charles Tansley had been saying, she looked up as if she expected to hear the crash of books on the floor above. Had been saying that people don't read Scott anymore. Then her husband thought, that's what they'll say of me. So he went and got one of those books. And if he came to the conclusion that's true, what Charles Tansey said, he would accept it about Scott. She could see that he was waiting, con- sorry, waiting, considering putting this with that as he read. But not about himself. He was always uneasy about himself. That trouble there. He would always be worrying about his own books. Will they be read? Will they be read? Are they good? Well, aren't they better? What do people think of me? Not liking to think of him so, and wondering if they had guessed at dinner why he suddenly became irritable when they talked about fame and books lasting, wondering if the children were laughing at that. She twitched the stocking out, and all the fine engravings came drawn with steel instrument about her lips and forehead, and she grew still like a tree which has been tossing and quivering, and now, when the breeze falls, settles leaf by leaf into quiet. It didn't matter, any of it, she thought. A great man, a great book, fame, who could tell? She knew nothing about it. But it was his way with him, his truthfulness. For instance, at dinner, she had been thinking quite instinctively, if only he would speak. She had complete trust in him, and dismissing all this as one passes in diving, now a weed, no a straw, no a bubble. She felt again, sinking deeper, as she had felt in the hall when the others were talking. There's something I want, something I have come to get. And she felt deeper and deeper without knowing quite what it was, with her eyes closed. And she waited a little, knitting, wondering, and slowly those words they said at dinner. The China rose is all abloom, and buzzing with the honeybee, began washing from side to side of her mind rhythmically. And as they washed, words like little shaded lights, one red, one blue, one yellow, lit up in the dark of her mind, and seemed leaving their perches up there to fly across and across, or to cry out and be echoed. So she turned and fell on the table beside her fore book. And all the lives wherever lived, and all the lives to be, are full of trees and changing leaves, she murmured, sticking her needles into the stocking. And she opened the book and began reading here and there at random, and as she did so, she felt that she was climbing backwards, upwards, shoving her way up under petals curved over her, so that she only knew this is white, this is red. She did not know at first what words meant at all. Steer, either steer your winged pines, all beaten mariners. She read and turned the pages, swinging herself, zigzagging this way and that, from one line to another, as from one branch to another, from one red and white flower to another, until a little sound roused her. Her husband slapping his thighs. Their eyes met for a second, but they did not want to speak to each other. They had nothing to say, but something seemed, nevertheless, to go from him to her. It was the life, it was the power of it, it was the tremendous humor, she knew, that made him slap his thighs. Don't interrupt me, he seemed to be saying. Don't say anything, just sit there. And he went on reading. His lips twitched. It filled him, it fortified him. He clean forgot all the little rubs and digs of the evening. Now it bored him. You knew terribly to sit still while people ate and drank interminably. And his being so irritable with his wife and so touchy and minding when they passed his book over as if they didn't exist at all. But now he felt it didn't matter. A damn would reach Z if thought ran like an alphabet from A to Z. Somebody would reach it. If not he, then another, then another. This man's strength and sanity, this feeling for straightforward, simple things, these fishermen, the poor old crazed creature in Mucklebacket's cottage made him feel so vigorous, so relief of something that he felt roused and triumphant and could not choke back his tears. Raising the book a little to hide his face, he let them fall and shook his head from side to side and forgot himself completely, but not one or two reflections about morality in French novels and English novels, and Scott's hand being tied, but his view perhaps being as true as the other view. Forgot his own brothers and failures completely in poor Steenie's drowning and Mucklebacket's sorrow that was cut at its best, and the astonishing delight and feeling of vigor that it gave him. Well, let them improve upon that, he thought as he finished the chapter. He felt that he had been arguing with somebody and had got the better of him. They could not improve upon that, whatever they might say, and his own position became more secure. The lovers were fiddlesticks, and he thought, collecting it all in his mind again, that's fiddlesticks, that's first rate, he thought, putting one thing beside another, but he must read it again, could not remember the whole shape of the thing. He had to keep his judgment in suspense, so he returned to the other thought. If young men did not care for this, naturally they did not care for him either. One ought not to complain, though Mr. Ramsay, trying to stifle his desire to complain to his wife that young men did not admire him, but he was determined. He would not bother her again. Here looked at her reading. She looked very peaceful reading. He liked to think that everyone had taken themselves off and that he and she were alone. The whole of life did not consist in going to bed with a woman, he thought, returning to Scott and Balzac, to the English novel and French novel. Mrs. Ramsay raised her head, and like a person in a light sleep, seemed to say that if you wanted her to wake, she would. She really would. But otherwise, might she go on sleeping just a little longer? Just a little longer? She was climbing up those branches, this way and that, laying hands on one flower and then another. Nor praise the deep vermilion in the rose, she read, and so reading she was ascending. She felt onto the top, onto the summit, how satisfying, how restful. All the odds and ends of the day stuck to this magnet. Her mind felt swept, felt clean. And then there it was, suddenly, entire shaped in her hands, beautiful and reasonable, clear and complete. The essence sucked out of life and held round and hair, the sonnet. But she was becoming conscious of her husband looking at her. He was smiling at her, quizzically, as if he were ridiculing her gently for being asleep in broad daylight. At the same time, he was thinking, go on reading. You don't look sad now, he thought. And he wondered what she was reading, and exaggerated her ignorance, her simplicity, for he liked to think that she was not clever, not book learned at all. He wondered if she understood what she was reading. Probably not, he thought. She was astonishingly beautiful. Her beauty seemed to him, if that were possible, to increase. Yet seemed it winter still, and you away, as with your shadow I with these did play. She finished. Sorry, not a great poetry reader. Well, she said, echoing a smile dreamily, looking it up from her book. As with your shadow I with these did play, she murmured, putting the book on the table. What had happened, she wondered, as she took up her knitting, since she had last seen him alone. She remembered dressing and seeing the moon, and holding his plate too high at dinner, being depressed by something William had said. The birds in the trees, the sofa on the landing, the children being awake, Charles Tansley waking them with his books falling. Oh no, not that she had invented, and Paul having a wash leather case for his watch, which should which should she tell him about? They're engaged, she said, beginning to knit. Paul and Minta. So I guess, he said, there was nothing very much to be said about it. Her mind was still going up and down with the poetry. He was still feeling very vigorous, very forthright, after reading about Steenie's funeral. So they sat silent. Then she became aware that she wanted him to say something. Anything, she thought, going on with her knitting. Anything will do. How nice it would be to marry a man with a wash leather bag for his watch, she said, for that was the sort of joke they had together. He snorted. He felt about disengagement as I always felt about any engagement. The girl is much too good for that young man. I also think like this most of the time. Slowly it came into her head. Why is it then that one wants people to marry? What was the value, the meaning of things? Every word they said no would be true. Do say something, she thought, wishing only to hear his voice. For the shadow, the thing then was beginning, she felt, close round her again. Say anything, she begged, looked at him, as if for help. He was silent, swinging the compass on his watch chain to and fro, and thinking of Scott's novel and Balzac's novel. But through the crepuscular walls of their intimacy, for they were drawing together, involuntarily coming side by side, quite close, she could feel his mind like a raised hand shadowing her mind, and he was beginning to know that her thoughts took a turn he disliked towards this pessimism, as he called it. To fidget, though, he said nothing, raising his hand to his forehead, twisting a lock of hair, letting it fall again. You won't finish that stocking tonight, he said, pointing to her stocking. That was what she wanted, the asperity in his voice, reproving her. If he says it's wrong to be pessimistic, probably it is wrong, she thought. The marriage will turn out all right. No, she said, flattening the stocking on upon her knee. I shan't finish it. And what then? For she felt that she was still looking at her, but at his look at but that his look had changed. He wanted something. Wanted the thing she always found it so difficult to give him. Wanted her to tell him that she loved him, and that no, she could not do. He found talking so much easier than she did. He could say things she never could. So naturally, it was always he that said the things. And then, for some reason, he would mind this suddenly and would reproach her. A heartless woman, he called her. She never told him that she loved him. It was not so. It was not so. It was only that she never could say what she felt. Was there no crumb on his coat? Nothing she could do for him. Getting up, she stood at the window with the reddish brown stocking in her hand, partly to turn away from him, partly because she did not mind looking now, with him watching, at the lighthouse. For she knew that he had turned his head as she turned and was watching her. She knew that he was thinking, you are more beautiful than ever, and she felt herself very beautiful. Will you not tell me just for once that you love me? He was thinking that, for I was roused. What with Minta and his book, and its being the end of the day, and their having quarreled about going to the lighthouse. But she could not do it. She could not say it. That knowing that he was watching her, instead of saying anything, she turned, holding her stocking, and looked at him. And as she looked at him, she began to smile, for though she had not said a word, he knew, of course he knew, that she loved him. He could not deny it. And smiling, she looked out of the window and said, thinking to herself, nothing on earth can equal this happiness. Yes, you were right. It's going to be wet tomorrow. She had not said it, but he knew it, and she looked at him smiling, for she had triumphed again. Okay? So next part is time passes. And I shall read it another time. It was nice to be back. It's been a while. Happy I did it. I'm happy I continued. And we'll see how it goes with that stupid pitch deck. If you're curious about my game, you can go on my website, which is audiobook.org. It should be in the description somewhere. And you can see stuff about my games, I think. I just renewed the website, so please go check it. Otherwise, it'll probably ship one day. Yeah. I think that's it for the random thoughts. Also, like, you'll have that podcast about video games soon-ish, also on our website. For random thoughts, the Oscar nomination have been announced yesterday, I think, or 2 days ago, and Ambulance by Michael Bay, which is my favorite American movie of the year, did not receive any nomination, so here's that. I haven't seen After Sun yet. Probably the best American movie of the year. I don't know. So yeah, I'll leave you with those movie recommendations. Ambulance and Gentleman, if you haven't seen them. Both great movie, probably a great double feature, except that they're both very long. Yeah, that'd be a great double feature. I have both in Blu-ray, so I might do that one day. I would always end up those things recommending some music. I have a good one to recommend. The name's not coming to me, so I'm going on my Apple Music. It's a song from Debbie Friday. It's called So Hard to Tell, and it fucking rips. So you should go listen to that. And well, let's hope I see you soon. But like, worst case scenario, we'll see each other in another year. But I'll try to do it before. See ya.